Okay, so just before we make a start today, very quickly, we are recording the session, so please don't put any personal information into the chat, or obviously if you come off mute, please do be conscious it is being recorded, so any noise can be heard. And also, if you do have any questions to ask which contain personal sensitive information, we'll just ask that you hold that until we finish the recording at the end, and then you can ask us. There will be a time to ask questions. And as we go throughout, please do use the chat to ask any questions. I am looking at the chat the whole time throughout the session today. As I say, it is being recorded, so I will be talking to the live audience as well. Sorry, not the live audience, so yourselves and also audience who might be viewing it at a later date. And that's also for any of you in the session today. You can review the content and watch it back afterwards. So if you need the resources, it will be accessible or made accessible to you. So the session itself today is basically a mashup of several sessions that I've developed over time, which I've brought key aspects of that all into one place. And that's to bring you the content around how we can manage our personal devices in a workplace setting. So that's with regards to actually accessing work-based systems or work information. We know there are lots of organizations that are using personal devices to operate via work. It could be anything down to just texting, sending various things through email, actually accessing work-based systems. It can be anything if it's related to work. And so that poses a risk. And we all know with all things cybersecurity, cyber related, digital related, it does open up that opportunity for cyber criminals, and especially from an organizational standpoint. It can be a target of cyber criminals. And so we need to ensure that our devices have the maximum security to ensure the protection of our work data. From a care setting, we're looking at staff, residents' information, all of that information to protect basically everybody involved in that area. And so that's why I'm bringing you this presentation today. And one area of this presentation, which I'll look at later on as we go through, will be the whole aspect of a bring your own device policy. And it might be something that you've looked at or heard. And when we go into that, it can be quite overwhelming. There's a lot of information there when we're looking at bring your own device policy. And I could create an entire series, if not multiple series, just dissecting that content. And so it will be something that I will consider going forward if the demand is there. We do need that demand and to look extensively at bring your own device. But the real need, which I've identified speaking to many different care homes, and as I say, it doesn't just have to be care homes, this can be any organizational standpoint, is the real need to protect our devices. It opens up a huge risk. And something I often say to people is, we often spend a lot of time actually protecting our workplaces with sophisticated locking systems, alarm systems, even our own homes or our cars. We make those very hard to get into, but often we neglect the side of protecting our work data. And would we let it that people could break into our houses, cars, workplaces instantly? No. So why would we allow that same? Why would we allow that for work? We wouldn't. We wouldn't expose data or our own data to that. So we need to ensure, as I say, that our devices are protected. And that's what I'm going to go through today in quite a bit of detail. And then finishing off by looking briefly at that you bring your own device and those considerations that we can follow when we're starting to build or implement a policy in our workplace. So the session outcome, just a few pieces here. You would have seen this on Eventbrite when you're booking the session, but it's obviously looking at those practical controls. I'll be showing you how to actually do certain things to protect your devices and ensure they're secure, authorized. There's that confidential access there to your data on those personal devices. Personal devices being any mobile device or your laptop or personal desktop at home that you might be using to access anything work related. We're going to look at some guidance where you can go to look at that to comply with requirements. and also looking at the skills to identify, assess, and manage risks associated with personal devices in the workplace. So very quickly, bring your own device. I just mentioned it, and you will see a lot of this when it comes to using your own devices. What is that? It's basically employees using their personally owned devices for work purposes, and that can be for anything that encompasses work related practices. Why are we seeing organizations using bring your own device? Well, basically, there's a few reasons for this. It gives staff the ability to use IT they are comfortable with. So it eliminates the need for major upskill, which could cause delays. It could cause, obviously, costs in training. And then people are actually not using devices we might be purchasing for work-related reasons. If they're using their own devices they're comfortable with, we see a higher increase in usability. Linking to that, it's reducing those overheads, so it reduces the need for organizations to go out and buy loads of new tech, which might not be used. It also allows flexible working, so you can access these systems at anywhere at any time, and what they see from the evidence and from the statistics they've pulled together so far is there is an increase in productivity if people are able to access it at any time. We do obviously need to consider a work-life balance, and that is something that is considered in bring your own device. Now, with all things digital, especially with bring your own device, there are challenges, and the main challenges here are protecting organizational data, protecting staff, yourself, your residents, whoever it might be, and ensuring that data is secure. Now, if people are now using their personal devices and they don't have certain aspects of protection in place, it could make it very easy for cyber criminals to access your systems, steal data, harvest information, and target multiple stakeholders, so to speak. And obviously that is a huge breach, and it could cause holes in data protection. We might not be legally complying anymore. We need to meet those obligations. So there are challenges here, and that's why we need to ensure if you are using your personal devices, if your staff are using personal devices, that they know how to keep those devices protected, and that you are ensuring there's some form of policy in place to regulate that and check up on that and make sure that things are being complied with. So we'll go through that as we touch on today. Now, bring your own device. Huge aspect to that is device security. That's what we're going to go through today. And using that security, risk can be minimized by ensuring we are using the right technical controls. So let's jump into how we can protect our personal devices. So a very quick starting point, and this goes for all of us, and this can be devices in a personal aspect as well. But this is something we need to consider. And as I say, from a staffing perspective, it's a good idea to start developing a policy that ensures each of these areas are complied with, that if your staff are using their devices to access work, that they are complying with basically these principles, and that you have found a way to ensure that they are complying with that. Now, as I say, this isn't just a tick box exercise. And that's something we often see when we put out there saying that people need to have cybersecurity in place. People often tick a box and then go back to their old practices because it's easier, without regarding why we're doing it. And the why behind this is that cyber criminals do target organizations. We have statistics out there that the vast majority of organizations are being targeted by cyber criminals every year, and they might not even know this is happening. And it can lead to huge data breaches, and they can cause huge reputational, organizational damage, and even damage to those linked to our organizations or ourselves. So that's why we need to ensure this. It's not just a tick box exercise. We're doing it for our own protection, those around us, and the reputation of our organizations. So to begin with, just a few simple things you could do. Obviously, screen lock protection. The reason we put that in place, it just ensures that if, as we know, if people are using their own devices, they will be carrying their devices out of the workplace. That poses the risk for losing your device, having them stolen, misplacing them, and getting into the wrong hands. So we need to make sure that we are putting controls in place to stop people accessing those devices. If we don't have any form of screen lock protection on there, someone could just go straight into the device and access your work system. So we need to make sure at first point we have that in place. Now that could be having a PIN code, a passcode, or certain biometrics like facial scanning, fingerprint scanning, just having something there to eliminate someone getting straight into the phone is a good starting point. Now, the next thing is to make sure that if we do lose or have our devices stolen, that we can track those remotely, lock them, or wipe them all remotely. Now, I've put two of the most common apps on here, which we can do that from. And there are many different applications out there. What I often say is do your own research in this area. But looking from a Android perspective, so if you have an Android device, tablet, phone, the most commonly used one is Google Find My Device. So what I would suggest there is you log into your Google account, or just go into Google and type in Find My Device. It'll take you through to a page which will get you set up. I'm just going to go across to what that looks like. This is Google Find My Device. I've obviously logged in on my Google account on my phone and on my computer, so the two are linked. So you would want to set this up obviously before you lose your device. I've turned my location off at the moment so you can't see it. But once you log into this, once you've linked your device to this, you'll be able to actually do a few different features with regard to, in my case, my phone. So say I lose or misplace or have my phone stolen when I'm out and about. First thing I would recommend is if you are out and about that you are putting that location on. Now, yes, it does drain your battery, but if you have your location on, Google Find My Device will be able to pinpoint where your device is on this map. So say I've lost my phone somewhere, I would then log into this and it would show me, provided my location is on, exactly where my device is in the world. And I can zoom right in to pinpoint where my device is. Now, criminals in general, they often know this. And so what they'll do is they'll turn the device off straight away or turn the location off because they know you could track it. And that poses the issue of, well, I can't see my phone now. And in that case, there are a few things we can do. So the first thing I would recommend is securing your device. So it basically implements some remote security aspects in there, which will secure the device. But it may not be enough if the device has been stolen. These cyber criminals, they can access data, they can use software available to them to access your data, even if you do have screen lock protection, that kind of thing in place. If your device isn't encrypted, we will get into encryption. And in that case, if you have lost your device or you fear it has been stolen and you cannot find it, I would recommend a factory reset. Now, that is last case scenario because a factory reset will delete everything off the phone and restore it back to factory condition. But what it ensures is that the phone is wiped. So if it has been stolen, that is the first thing I recommend. If you know it has been stolen, log into this, factory reset the device, and it will remove everything. That eliminates the criminal getting into your workplace based systems. And that is last resort. And you click this option and it wipe it. Now, if you have just lost it or misplaced it, you can pinpoint it on the map. Go find it. You might not be able to find it, especially in your place of work. It might be hidden somewhere. So you can actually play a sound from your device and it will ring and you'll actually hear it out loud. And then you can go and find it that way. For iOS, for those Apple devices, the app is called Find My. It looks like this. And it does pretty much the same thing. You can link all Apple products to this. And again, you can track them on a map. If the location has been switched off, you would obviously use those same features of wiping the phone, which you can do. So you can lock it down, you can wipe the phone, you can factory reset it all from the Find My app. So again, very much the same, but these two very similar applications there. Now, what if it's your laptop? So say you have a Windows laptop, so you have a Windows laptop. How do you ensure that that is protected? Well, there's a way that you can do this. And you can go into your security settings on your Windows device. I'm just going to go across to my settings. So bear with me a second. So I'll load these up in the background. I'm just going to use a proxy user here, so it's not a real user. So you can go to your settings here. You go to privacy and security. There's a few different settings you can do in here, but one of them in privacy and security is find my device. So what you want to do is you want to set this up, obviously on your laptop. And again, you do need the location settings on. Mine's all off at the moment. But once that's all turned on, you just turn on Find My Device. And what would happen is if you lost your laptop, you would go into your Windows account from a different device, and then you'll be able to locate your Windows device. So say I lose my laptop, provided I've turned all of this on, my location is on, I'll be able to do the same thing from my Windows account. And if I can't do that from my Windows, again, it would be your Microsoft account. From my Microsoft account, I would be able to remotely wipe my computer in worst case scenario. So those are a few ways in which you can protect your device. Now, there is an additional step that we can do, and that is encrypting our devices. And I'll go into that in a moment. But very quickly, two other key aspects which I'll touch on are keeping your devices and apps up to date. This is essential. Whenever you see those software updates or those security updates, don't push them back. I would suggest you do them as soon as you are prompted. The reason for that is it gives you the latest protection against the latest cyber threats. Now, again, another area I will touch on in this session is to do with if our software is up to date. We do want that new technology to ensure that we can do those software updates. We know that the more outdated technology gets or your devices get, companies will start stopping software updates. So if you have old systems or old models, you may not be offered software updates anymore. And it's just simply because it's outdated tech and it can't handle those software updates. The tech isn't there anymore. So having that new technology will ensure you can do software updates. Software updates are really important. As I say, cyber criminals, they have technology accessible to them, and that software is getting more sophisticated. That software to commit attacks is getting more sophisticated, and so we need to ensure that our systems are also very sophisticated. We do that through those software updates. How do you find those software updates? Well, on an Android, what I always suggest is you literally just go to your settings and simply type in updates. And it will take you through to software updates, and you can check if you've got any updates, software updates in there. iOS, you normally just go into your general settings, say Apple devices, and then you can do software updates from there. From a Windows device, you'd go to your settings. Again, it would be found in privacy and security. You have lots of different options in here available to you. If you can't specifically find it, just go to find a setting and type in update, and we'll just give it a moment. Windows update settings. And in here, you can check for updates. I'm all up to date in here. But if you do have any software updates available, it will prompt you there and you can do a software update. But they are absolutely essential. And I'll go through later on a bit more in detail on those. And then finally, making sure that when you are accessing work-based systems or sending work emails or accessing any private work-related data, that you're only doing that on private and trusted Wi-Fi networks. And again, we'll get into that in a bit more detail as we go through. But one thing I really want to touch on quickly before I move on is device encryption. So as I mentioned, you could lose your device. Those cyber criminals will have access to those devices. There is software available to them, even if you have screen locks in place, which means that they could extract the data and then view that data. So you need to make sure that your devices are encrypted so that these cyber criminals cannot get access to that data. What is encryption? Basically, it is a method by which information on your device is converted into secret code. That's the easiest way to explain it. It hides your information's true meaning by basically jumbling it all up into unreadable code. And the science of encrypting and decrypting is called cryptography. So that's basically what encryption is. It means that, yes, your device might be encrypted. If you go through, you log in, you'll be able to see all your information fine. But if a cyber criminal got hold of your phone and they couldn't get through those first screens, and they tried to use software to extract the data they extract will basically be completely unreadable, and it would almost be impossible to decipher what it means. And that's why it makes it so critical to have on our devices. It also means that if we did have a cyber attack, say a cyber criminal launched some malware into our systems to spy or try and steal our data, it wouldn't be able to. It wouldn't be able to read the information available to it because it would be encrypted. So it gives you layers of security. Now, quite often when people are told to encrypt their devices, it can sound very complicated and people are put off by it, but it's actually very simple to do. So with Android, the way to do it is simply go to your settings and type the word encryption. You'll then have an option to go through and encrypt your device. It's that simple. There are also third-party tools available to you where you can encrypt as well. Again, I'm not going to be here and advertise them, but you can do your research on those. But I say from Android settings, just type in encryption and then follow the steps there. iOS have made it very simple. So Apple, once you set a passcode on your device is encrypted. It's that simple. So as long as you have a passcode on your device is automatically encrypted. And so many people don't put passcodes on there and they don't realize the layers of security that implements. What about your computer, your Windows device? It's more likely you're going to have much more information, much more data on there. So how do I encrypt my computer? So where you want to go is you want to go to settings again. You want to go to privacy and security. Now, one thing I will highlight is that if you have made alterations to your computers, so it might be that you've bought new hardware, so new memory, whatever it might be, you've put that in yourself. A lot of people do that. People buy second-hand devices as well, where they might put new components in there. If it's not completely up to date, if your system isn't fully updated or certain components don't meet certain criteria, you probably won't have the device encryption feature in here. But we'll just start off from there and then we'll touch on how to actually do that if you don't have that feature. But for most of us, if we go to privacy and security, you'll see there's an option called device encryption. If you can't see this, just go to settings and type encryption. And all we need to do is go into there and then it's this simple. You've got device encryption and you just turn it on. And that will then encrypt your device. So now everything is encrypted. You can also encrypt individual files as well, like Microsoft Word, that kind of thing, by going to the settings in there, encrypting them. However, if you're using a secure service or a secure email service, so for instance, NHS Mail, they provide you with secure login for Microsoft. And so that provides end-to-end encryption anyway. So those programs, those documents will be automatically encrypted. But it's a good idea to encrypt your device. Now, as I say, you might not have that option there, the really simple option. And if you don't have that, the next option is to go to BitLocker. So you can see we've got BitLocker here. Again, if you don't see that there, just go to settings and simply type in BitLocker. You have an option called Manage BitLocker. So we'll just click into that. And then mine's on. So what that does is it basically encrypts your drive. So I have my hard drive, so to speak, or SSD drive, depends what you have. But you will have a drive on your computer, which is basically the brain of your computer where everything is stored. You are encrypting that. And so you can do that through BitLocker. You just need to ensure it's on, and then it will take you through various steps to ensure that is in place. Now, part of that is you do need to create a recovery key. It is very important that you have that noted down, because if you don't, and you can't get into it, you won't be able to access it yourself. It will also get you to back up your recovery key as well, just so you have that in place, backed up, should you not have access to that as well. But you will follow those steps. It will walk you through in detail, step by step, how to do that. So that's the next way in which you can do that. And again, not overlooking it, you can also set up third-party encryption through third-party programs. But again, I'm not going to advertise those here today, just showing you the features that are readily available to you on those systems. So quickly recapping, Android settings, type in encryption, follow it through. iOS, just have a passcode. Windows, you want to go to privacy and security or BitLocker. So one of the main threats that we often encounter from cyber criminals is they will launch malware to our systems. Now, malware can come in many different forms, and they can do this through different methods like social engineering, where they might phone you up, send you text messages, send you emails, and they're basically sending you links to click on, which could download malware. They can also use social engineering to send you to fake websites, that kind of thing as well. But one of the biggest threats, especially to our workplace, is malware. Malware can do different things like hijack our systems, lock us out of our systems, send viruses, which can again infect our files, lock them, delete them, destroy them. They could also send spyware, which can actually sit on your computer, hidden away, and anything you're saving or working on, they can see that information. And again, there's lots of different things they can do, and it can be very hard to actually trace that information on there. Now, I'll go through some of these. One of them that I do want to touch on is ransomware. We have seen ransomware attacks in the past, and ransomware attacks specifically on organizations where entire organizations have shut down temporarily because of ransomware. And there are different ways in which cyber criminals can do this. There's either screen lock ransomware, where they lock your screen and they force you to pay in order to get everything back, or they can actually encrypt your files so you can't access them until you pay them. Now, in most cases, they use screen lock, and that is best case scenario because it's quite simple to get rid of, and I'll tell you how to do that in a minute. Worst case scenario, they will encrypt your device and you will not be able. It is very, very difficult to get that information back, and that's where you want to be backing up your information. And we'll touch on that just after this about why you should back up and how you back up. Now, here are some examples of ransomware. These are quite old ones, but they're quite notorious ones. The first one I've actually had myself. So one day I remember, this would have been probably 13 years ago, I'd say. It would have been 2012. I remember clicking a link, and I had this pop up. I couldn't actually click anything on my computer. This was the only thing I could see, and it was telling me it was from the police. So they're using those fear tactics. My camera turned on, and I could see my face in this box here. So I was actually looking at myself. It's quite scary when you can see that, saying that everything's being recorded. They've got your IP, and basically they're telling you that your computer's been locked. You've basically broken the law somewhere. It's a specialist crime department, and the only way to unlock this is to pay a fine. And so they make you pay the fines down here in order to unlock the device. And they tell you got to pay within 48 hours. So that's one that I've seen. Some other ones which have been launched in organizations, some quite famous ones. We had this CryptoLocker one, which was in 2013, where an entire organization got these pop up, and it was because people were clicking on links in emails, which then got through. They found a way in, and they managed to lock everybody's computers, and they were telling them that their files had been encrypted and they had to pay in order to get that back. If they didn't do it within 72 hours, they would delete everything. So the organizations were literally held ransom, and they were told, if you do not pay, we will delete everything. And basically you can see the issue that would rise for an organization. Another very famous one was this one here. This one happened, I believe, in 2012. Again, an entire organization, because people clicking on links, and then because spyware was able to get in and then infiltrate everybody's systems. They had this one, which again said that everything was encrypted. They had to pay a ransom, otherwise they wouldn't be able to access the devices. And again, they gave them a time limit in order to do this. Now, in most cases, they're not actually encrypting your files. As I say, what they're doing is they're putting a screen lock, and they're telling you it's encrypted, and they're telling you you've got to pay a ransom. These are actually quite easy to remove. The way in which you would do it is you would start your computer in safe mode. So first thing I always say is, disconnect your internet. Turn your computer off. Turn the computer back on again. Press F8. And it will take you to safe mode. Now, in safe mode, you want to run an antivirus scan. So this is where the need for antivirus software comes in. We all want to make sure that we have antivirus software on our devices. And the reason for that is we want to run a scan to delete the malware. Now, this is malware. If you have ransomware, it is malware. And as I say, the way around that is to disconnect your internet, turn your computer off, turn it back on, F8, safe mode, antivirus scan. And then it will delete it. You'll be able to go back into your computer as normal and it won't be there. Panic over. Now, in the worst case scenario, your computer does get encrypted. That's where you're going to need backups. Now, as I say, it's very, very difficult to retrieve that information. You'll probably need some IT specialists in order to do that. And that can cost quite a bit of money. You might have that infrastructure in place. You might have IT specialists there who can do that. But if it does happen, it's likely you need to operate on another device and you need to have access to backed up files. Now, backed up files are a created copy, and you want to be doing that. You want to be creating copies of everything on your system so that worst case scenario, if this does happen, you can continue business as normal. And we'll touch on that as we go through. Now, some other ways in which you can keep your systems protected from malware are those software updates. If you're updating your software, it ensures you have the latest protection against the latest threats. Usually when we're detecting new cyber threats or malware, the companies who provided you your devices are aware of this, and they will do system updates to ensure those attacks are no longer viable. The next thing that we should be doing is we should have security tools in place like antivirus software. Antivirus software often comes with firewalls, and that makes sure that we are running those, or we have those in place, constantly scanning, constantly checking to make sure that there are no viruses hidden away or malware hidden away on our computer. Now, cybercriminals can launch malware that can sit on your computer for months, if not years, and then launch an attack. So we need to be ensuring that we have a policy in place that every so often we're running those antivirus scans to check. And it should almost be a daily occurrence that you are running a scan to make sure that there is nothing on the computer. And this goes with all your staff. They should be doing antivirus scans on their systems. Now, for phones, you don't usually need to do them. If you've got software updates on there, that's what you should do on the phones. But on your computers, laptops, you want to be doing antivirus scans. You also would want to use secure email, and we'll get into that a bit more in a moment. But secure email basically comes with lots of features like it has end-to-end encryption. You can report phishing attacks, but they're very hard for phishing attacks to actually come through. Now, again, I'll touch on this in a moment. I'll explain it in more detail. But most of the time, you will not get emails or spoof emails coming through to those accounts. So they have that additional security in there. You want to be backing up your data regularly. So if you do get a cyber criminal, encrypt everything, lock everything, you can continue business as normal. And you want to have controls in place. You need to be auditing this. It's down to you how you do that. You are the ones who are creating these policies, but you also want to be stress testing these as well. So you'll have an instant response plan. So if something like this does happen, you've already tested what you'll do in that event, and you're upskilling your staff in that scenario as well. Again, just a few more bits of information there. Use that reputable antivirus software. So I'm not going to tell you ones to use. Go do your research, check the reviews, make sure it is reputable, make sure it's secure and solid, and you'll be regularly running those scans across all devices. And you already get your staff into the habit of doing those, or in the case of mobile devices, software updates. Having multi-factor authentication and password policies in place just ensure that we have maximum security, so that if cyber criminals did get secure information, they wouldn't be able to access various systems because we'd have multi-factor authentication in place. And again, we'll touch on that in a moment. But the biggest one is education. Human error is a significant factor for malware infections. It is usually because we're clicking links we shouldn't be clicking, or going on websites we shouldn't be going on, or clicking on links in text messages, that we are opening ourselves to those threats. Yes, we can have all the security in place, but it is 99% of the time human error is the reason for these infections. So providing regular training and helping people to feel confident using their devices will eliminate most of these risks. So I mentioned it a few times about backing up your data. Worst case scenario, we get antivirus on there. We get a virus on there, or our systems are locked or they're encrypted. We need to continue business as usual. And so that's where you'd back up your data. Now, backing up your data is simply creating a copy on a separate device or system. So for instance, I can no longer access my files on my computer. That's okay because I've created a copy of all my files on a different device. It might be an external hard drive, like I've got here. It might be stored in cloud storage, which you can access from any device. Those are where you're looking at. So you can just access those and continue business as normal, should your device be locked. It's a secure store. You need to make sure that it's securely stored. So again, that's down to you how you're doing that. It might be really simple to the point of every day you're putting all your information onto an external hard drive and you're storing that external hard drive in a safe. And that's just a regular business practice you're doing. Or it could be every day you're putting the data onto cloud storage. And you need to make sure that cloud storage is a secure storage service. And again, with things like NHS Mail, Secure Mail, it comes with cloud storage as well. So you do have that secure login for that. But one of the biggest ones is that you're stress testing. So you want to be every now and then, maybe every month or every 3 months, simulating a scenario where you can't access your systems so you know what to do in that situation. We've had stories of organizations who have stress tested, or they've actually had a situation happen where they can't access anything, and they've come to plug in their external hard drive only to find there's nothing on there, even though they were backing that up every day. But they never actually checked if the information was saving. And that can be done through a regular audit, but it's down to you how you're doing that. Now, we need to ensure that staff training is in place. We need to ensure that our staff are using good password practice and also multi-factor authentication. So there's a few ways you can do this. So again, this could be for your phone or any work-related system. You want to make sure you have a strong, secure password. So often people are using very basic passwords because they're easy to remember, or they're using passwords made of a combination of personal information because it's easy to remember. It might be very complex, but it's made up of birthdays and places. One thing you have to consider there is that cyber criminals aren't literally sat behind a computer guessing your passwords. They are using sophisticated software that is getting more and more powerful that can guess tens of thousands of combinations of passwords a second, and they can input certain keywords in there. So if they do have malware spying on your devices, or they have done background research on you, they can input certain keywords, and those systems could crack your passwords instantaneously, even if they are complex, if they're linked back to you. So we need to make them random, or we need to make them complex. Now, there's a very good resource you can use here, and I advise lots of organizations on this one. And it's called How Secure Is My Password? The National Cybersecurity Centre recommend this one as well. So I posted that into the chat. Don't put your actual passwords in there. Use it more as a template, but you can use this as a staff training tool to show people how a strong password is created. Now, as I say, people will often use very simple passwords because they think they can outsmart the criminals by saying, well, if it's really obvious, it's like hiding in plain sight. That cyber criminal is never going to get it. It's too obvious. Well, it's not the cyber criminal, it's the software, and that software will guess it instantly. You can see my password manager trying to put in a password at the moment. Now, the most common password for the past 4 years from data that we've sourced was actually the word password, all lowercase. So if I type in password, all lowercase, that will be cracked almost instantly. Well, it will be cracked instantly. A system will go on there and it will guess that instantly. So you've got the most commonly used password and it's able to be cracked instantly. And I always say again, would you let it that your home or car could get broken into instantly? No. So why are we letting it that all of this sensitive data, which could cause huge damage, would be cracked instantly? We wouldn't. So we need to figure out what makes a strong password. As I say, use random words that can't be linked back to you. Now, you might have the option of a password manager like this, where we'll just choose a password for you and then it will store it. Obviously, you need to remember the password to your password manager. That's the only one you need to remember. But you might not have that with all systems, and it is down to you to create a strong password, especially with bring your own device to work, bring your own device policy. From an organizational standpoint, you may need to enforce a strict criteria that needs to be met, that people must use certain aspects of a password in order to comply, and people need to be confirming they are doing that. to fall in line. Certain systems do that as well, so you could implement systems that enforce that. But again, I'm not going to get into that in too much detail. That is for a much more extended session should I need to do one. But you want to choose random words. So I'm going to choose 3 completely random words. So I've got a bottle over here, so I'll type in the word bottle. We know all lowercase word, that'll be cracked almost instantly. I've got a mug next to me, so bottle mug. That'll take 2 minutes. And then I've got a hard drive over here. So bottle mug, hard drive. Again, you can't see this, but I can. So bottle mug, hard drive, that would take 23 million years for a computer to crack that password. Now, brilliant. I'm not going to be here in 23 million years. That's great. I'll leave it at that. No, we want to make these very complex, very layered. And the reason for that is because today it would take a computer 23 million years, but we know technology is increasing at an exponential rate. And with the increasing use case of AI, and we're seeing huge developments there as well, what takes a computer 23 million years today, this time next year with technological breakthroughs could take a computer a matter of minutes. So we need to make sure these are very complex. Now, there are 3 more steps we can do to ensure this. Add a capital letter in there. So I had a bottle, so I'll add a capital B. That takes me to 6 trillion years. Add a number in there, so I'll do the number 9. That's 9 quadrillion years. And then add a special character. I'll do an @ symbol. That is 42 quintillion years. And what you're looking for with this tool is this background to turn green. And that's telling you that's how you make a strong password. So it's a tool you can use just to ensure staff are getting that green background. And there's lots of information down here which walks you through how to create those strong passwords, why they're important, and the impacts on not having these on business. Now, a cyber criminal might have your password. They might have got your email address, your password, and they can get through. And that's where the need for multi-factor authentication, also known as 2-step verification, comes in. It is critical that we have this. Multi-factor authentication, I cannot stress enough how beneficial this is. It is so important because it almost makes a system impenetrable, because a cyber criminal would physically need something in your possession in order to access your system. What I mean by that is I use the case for NHS Mail. With NHS Mail, you have a multi-factor authentication. So you put in your email address, your password. It will then prompt you for a second step in order to log in. Now, it'll be one of 3 things depending how you set it up. It could either be a phone call to your phone, which is an automated voice telling you to press a certain character, and then it will log you in. It might be a password sent to your as a text message to your phone, which you then use that code to log in. Or it might be an app on your phone, which you then get a code and it logs you in. In all 3 of those scenarios, the cyber criminal would physically need your phone in order to log in. Now, there are ways in which they're starting to try and bypass this. One of those, again, is a social engineering technique known as phishing, where a cyber criminal will phone you up, pretending to be someone in a position of authority or power in order to get that second step code out of you. Now, from an IT standpoint, it might be someone pretending to be from the IT department of one of the systems you're using. You see CEO fraud as well, where someone pretends to be someone in a position of power in a company, and they'll ring you pretending to be that person. And they'll basically say, again, from an IT perspective, we're just doing a few checks on your account. I'm just going to send a code over to your phone. Can you just read that code back to me? What you haven't realized is they're trying to log in. They send you the code, you read it back to them, they're now able to log in. So that's the way they're trying to get around it. Never give that code to anybody. That's just for you. The most secure method, I would say, in that scenario is to have the Authenticator app. The reason for that, we're seeing an a rise here in this threat, which has started, is on the increase. It's called SIM card simulation or SIM simulation. And what it is cyber criminals are actually doing tons of background research on somebody. What they'll do is they will contact the person's phone provider and they will pretend to be the person who they're committing the crime against. And they will try to get the address reset on with their phone provider and get a SIM card sent out to them with the same phone number. And that's SIM simulation. So they can make 250 phone calls a day, and they just need one person from your phone provider to take the bait. And if that one person takes the bait and sends a SIM card to them with your phone number, that cyber criminal can now go ahead and use that use the text message to log in. Now, that's not saying it's going to happen. It is rare, but it is on the rise. But that's why I'd say the most secure one is to have the Authenticator app as your two-step verification method. Now, just some stats here, which I've thrown up. Over 93% of healthcare organizations experienced a data breach from 2017 to 2020. Outdated here, but it's just some relevant information. So the majority of them experienced a data breach. And the 80% of those data breaches can be prevented by simply enabling MFA. And this is the real shocking statistic here. More than 99.9% of compromised accounts can be blocked just by using MFA. So 99.9% just by using multi-factor authentication. And you can set up multi-factor authentication on most systems. Often they don't give it to you readily available, but to do it, you need to go to privacy settings. One place I would tell you to go is just do a simple Google or web browser search, just saying, how do I set up multi-factor or two-step verification on, say, my email or this or this or this or social media. You can set it up on most things. It just ensures that maximum security is there. Now, the next thing I would recommend for all of us is to use secure email. From an organizational standpoint, I have spoken to so many organizations who are not using secure email. They'll use personal email because they find it easier or it's become common practice. And that exposes a huge, huge risk. If you're sending work information or sensitive or confidential patient or staff information over non-secure email, there are so many risks there. Also, you have the risks of phishing attacks come through, so it exposes you to more malware attacks, and that's where we need to use secured email. Now, again, I'll use the example of NHS Mail here. That is a secure email service for the care sector. And that is something that is available to you, but it provides a number of different things. But secure email, what makes it different? It uses end-to-end encryption, so it is encrypted. All the data on there is encrypted. There are strong privacy protections on there as well. You have things, you have enhanced security features, so it enables two-factor verification, multi-factor authentication. We've just gone through that, why that's important. You have protection from phishing and malware. They often have departments that will be preventing that, will be updating the code there to stop these cyber criminals getting through or finding weaknesses. I tested this by spoofing a secure email account. It never came through. I wanted to just check it for myself. So most of the time you're not going to get those through. And if you do get those through, you have the option to report those to a department who will then find the weakness and they'll patch it and eliminate that. You also often with secure email have secure cloud storage that comes with it. So it gives you that system in place to ensure that you can back up all your data. And also these secure emails, they comply with data protection. And they give you secure access anywhere. So if you're using those personal devices, you're bringing your own devices, you need to make sure you have a secure email system to ensure that if you are using that and people are using devices outside of your workplace, they have maximum security there. We often do most of our work through email, so I cannot see a reason why you would not have that. As I say, so often I have seen victims of these cyber attacks. I used to work in banking. I used to work closely with the fraud departments. I've had conversations with the people and the organizations who have literally lost everything. All their organizations have effectively been destroyed from a cyber perspective simply because they weren't following certain steps or criteria. They did see it as a tick box exercise. They ticked the box and they never followed it up. They never audited it. They never did the checks. They never did the training just because they ticked that bit of paper so they could get certain access to certain systems or regulation. It didn't give them the protection because they weren't following it and it was too late. So that is why we need to be bringing these things in place now. Now, another key aspect is if you're using your personal devices, it's very likely staff are going to be being exposed to public Wi-Fi. And public Wi-Fi is really dangerous if you're accessing work-related systems. Why? Because they're public. It is in the word. We don't know how those companies that are offering the Wi-Fi are using your data. We don't know how easily accessible they are. You could also be exposed to fake networks where people could set up a fake Wi-Fi network in the same name as a reputable one. So you could be in a coffee shop using their public Wi-Fi. They could have one set up by a fraudster under the same name, and they could just steal all your information if you log into it. What I always recommend, if you're not willing to do something in public, don't do it on public Wi-Fi. So what is the solution to that? Well, use your mobile data. That is a private network. Only use private networks to do work-related activities. But if you absolutely must use a public network to do anything, make sure you have a virtual private network called a VPN in place. You can do your research on those. Some are free, some are paid for, some offer trial periods. Again, do your research, make sure they are reputable. But a virtual private network basically creates a virtual network which is private for you, and it ensures more security, much more security than using a public network. So that is one way around it. But I would always recommend using your private networks like mobile data, or just saving it until you're in an office space or at home with your private Wi-Fi. So those are the different ways in which you can put steps in place to protect your devices. Now, as I mentioned at the start of this, you can put these steps in place, but you can also implement a bring your own device policy to your workplace. And that just ensures you have a policy there that everybody's following, you're auditing it. It might be that you have integrated certain systems in place that are installed onto personal phones to separate personal and work. I won't go into all of that today, but you can find all of that information in the National Cybersecurity Centre. So if I go through to that, we have the bring your own device policy in here, and there is lots of information. They also have how to develop your policy, and it will take you through extensively step by step. Now, a lot of the things from a technical standpoint I integrated into this session, and we'll quickly have a look at those now. So for instance, what are the minimum standards for hardware or software versions? So that's something you should consider as an organization. If people are using devices, it will be a case that you need to make sure that their devices still accommodate software updates. Now, if their devices are old, it's likely they won't have software updates available to them. And you need to realize that there is a big risk there in that if software updates aren't available anymore, they don't have the latest protection against the latest threats. So they might need additional security features in place like antivirus software, that kind of thing, to protect those devices. So how are you enforcing that? How are you checking that's being done? What policies will you enforce? How will you enforce them? Will you apply, again, will they apply a device application or both levels? Again, different things. These could be ensuring that people have minimum password lengths or passcode lengths, or doing that training we looked at a moment ago about passwords, or ensuring that people have multi-factor authentication in place. That's down to you. Again, you will be shaping this policy, and then it's down to you. How are you enforcing that? How are you checking that if people are using personal devices, they're complying with these? How will you handle an employee changing their device? So what if someone gets a new device, or they change their role or leave the organization? Another big risk is often people leave the organization or change role, but they still have access to your systems. Again, it poses a huge threat because we're no longer able to audit that access, and they could have their password or their details saved elsewhere. They could be exposed to cyber threats. They could get malware, which could spy and get hold of their information, and your systems could be accessed by someone who is not even in your organization anymore. So you need to ensure that you are managing that as well. What service access policies will you enforce? So again, multi-factor authentication, that should be a minimum requirement. If you're using work systems outside of work, you need to ensure that there is multi-factor authentication on any system used for work. How will individual services prevent personal devices from accessing sensitive data? So again, this might be a case of how are you separating work and personal on a device? And that could be by you bringing technology into the phone, which the employee has to download, which separates the two, so they log into a work-based system. The National Cybersecurity Centre, they provide lots of information on that. And again, if that is a series, which I do in the future, it's something that I would dive into in more depth. And again, just more detail there on that. What you do if there is an event. So again, you need to be stress testing this. You need to simulate the scenario that there is a security incident, and you need to know what to do and how to mitigate the risks and how to protect those who have been impacted. What types of devices we allow? So again, it could be that you stem this to just a certain amount of devices. So maybe just phones, maybe not phones and tablets, maybe just laptops. It might be that no one's allowed to use phones or tablets. They can only use their personal laptop. So again, you need to consider all of these. Where will they be used as well? So is it just in office spaces? Can they use them outside of office spaces? Again, I went through that risk of public Wi-Fi, losing devices. It could be that people are only permitted to access these in a work-based environment. Again, that's down to you to think about. And I've added all of these just as points to consider when we're building out those policies. So again, lots of different information on there. That is for a full series which I can develop going forward. Before I take any questions, just want to highlight some key pieces of information. Obviously, a disclaimer there, which I put on these. Obviously, I've tried to make all the information as accurate as possible to my own knowledge. But again, the content provided does not constitute professional advice or legal guidance or any form of endorsement. I need to put that there just for my own protection. So that is there. But also, we do lots of additional series. So I do ones on cybersecurity. We do loads of different courses and webinars, and we offer lots of different help to organizations, so you can contact us directly. You can go to our website to see all future webinars. So if you go to the right hand side of the screen, you'll see them all on there, and that's sussexdigitalteam.co.uk. I've also left my personal email on there as well, so that's sam@sussexdigitalteam, so you can reach out to me if you need any one-to-one support. And also we now have a LinkedIn page, and again, that's the Sussex Digital InReach team. Do give that a follow, because we have all of the information about our webinars, future webinars, and also anything going on in this space, which we are posting on there or keeping you informed. But as I say, if the need is there for that full series on Bring Your Own Device, it is something that we can build out going forward. While I wait for any questions, Nada, is there anything else that you would like to add?